Hello and welcome to Black Bear Atheist. Today we're watching another pastor's video. It's Pastor Mark Driscoll. Driscoll. I think I did one video on him. It was a mix between with another video. He has interesting views. Today we're gonna learn why the only translation of the Bible worth reading is whatever he's saying. You're gonna hear his view on this. And I don't really like doing much of reactions on pastors. Or I don't really do it much because I feel like there's other channels that do it better. But I've seen some of the things on this guy channel, and I thought it would be quite interesting to react on some of his videos and bring his bullshit forward. I guess. Let's get into the video.
Why are there so many different Bible translations? And when it comes to Bible
Now I have an answer. Now it's gonna take 5 minutes, but I have a simple answer. Because the religion is simply BS, and it depends on your view on it. I mean, you technically see this with any major religion. The When they diffuse to different places and go to different places and different cultures, they mix. This is only natural. Now, if you're claiming it's the inherent word of God, that should not be happening. But that's exactly what's happening with the Bible. Why there's so many translations and God is not doing shit? I don't know the answer to that question. But the answer to the question he's asking why there's so many Bible translations is clearly the religion itself is BS. And that's why it changes. You don't have scientific theories changing because of different people's opinion. No, it's still the same thing back with evidence. But you have the Bible that's just based on your opinion, no evidence. So it can change when people want it to change. It depends on your personal opinion. Now let's hear his answer. I hope it's not stupid.
translations, there are certain people like, oh, that's just a bad translation. And this is what, for example, the Mormons say a lot. Every time you open up the Bible and quote something that disagrees with them, they just say it's a bad interpretation. Anytime you're interpreting an ancient text, any kind of, it could be Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, Epimenides, Alexander the Great, could be any work from antiquity, there are four different options for translating from the original language into your language. And just so you know, the Bible was originally written largely, the Old Testament is in Hebrew, New Testament is Greek, and a few parts are in Aramaic. So linguistic scholars are working from the ancient manuscripts to the modern languages. There are word-for-word translations, and this is where you need to get it exactly right. How many of you are lawyers, you're accountants, you do tax preparation, you do building codes, okay? You people are into the details. Right? Some of you are artists, you're like,
I can only recognize two of them, King James Version and the New King James. The others, not sure. Never used them.
finger paint. I don't know. But for those of you who are in those highly meticulous trades, you're like, no, we need to do the accounting right, we need to do the engineering right, we need to do the legal right. And you can't just sort of feel your way through it. It has to be very specific. That's where word
Because you're going to jail if you don't. So, and you could actually end up killing people. Anyways, back to his point.
for word can be most helpful, particularly when you're dealing with history or legal documents or measurements or financial amounts. Word for word translations would include the English Standard Version, which I'm preaching out of, the King James Version, the New King James Version, and something called the New American Standard Version, or the New American Standard Bible. Number two is thought for thought. There are some things when you go to translate them, if you just go hard wooden literal, you kind of lose the beauty and the poetry of it. So for example, in the Bible, there are entire sections that are poetic. There are whole books of the Bible that are poetry, like the Song of Solomon. How many of you have tried to put poetry into Google Translator and it didn't come out exactly like it should have? Because it gets all the words right, but it doesn't get the heart and the poetry, and it doesn't get the rhyme and the rhythm and the feel and the cadence. Because it's not just the letter of the law, it's the
Because he has a different language. I mean, if you have a song in English and you translate it to another language, it might not just go well with the rhythm of the beat that's going with the song. It just most likely won't in many cases. So it doesn't mean the meaning changes. It just means it's not poetic. Let's keep listening.
Spirit of the law. And so then, thought for thought would be like the New International Version, which I became a Christian reading, the New Living Translation, which is fantastic.
The New International, I heard someone telling me, I think it was in the comments saying it wasn't like a good translation. Yeah, I really don't care.
And I love it in the Old Testament. It's a new favorite, and the contemporary English version. And then there are paraphrases, and paraphrases don't necessarily pretend to be pure translations. Some of them won't even have the verses, and they're adding words, not to change it, but to try to give context and meaning and hue and color. And this would be, for example, helpful when you get into the songs in the Bible. There's lots of songs. And if you just hand a really great singer-songwriter to an accountant and let him translate, probably not going to get the full impact of what was intended through the song. And so that's where things like paraphrases come in. That would be the Message, the Living Bible, the Amplified Bible, and the Voice. And then the fourth is a corruption. And this is not trying to translate the Bible. This is trying to change the Bible. There's a translation called the New World Translation. The Jehovah's Witness cult uses it. And they have systematically gone through the Bible and removed everything that refers to Jesus as God, except they missed a few too. So when they knock on my door, that's where we start, at my house. But it's their intent to change Jesus. It's their intent to change Jesus. Now,
Now we're gonna stop him before he keeps on going about the Jehovah Witness and now they're a cult. They probably are. But then most of these churches, the one that is also in pastoring, is also could technically accommodate the definition of a cult. Tricking people into giving you money, spend their time and devotion on you, on literally lies, ignoring evidence, to go on your feelings and things that are not true. Delusion. Again, your church could actually also be based on the things that your church do and the things that you preach could based on a cult. I see how there's Christians will point to a Catholic and say, "Oh, that's a cult," and any other denominations that they don't like, they will call them a cult. But you are actually uh, literally a cult.
what happens is some people are like, well, we don't have good translation or it's been wrongly interpreted. Actually, that's not true. And I've got it in the ebook that I'm giving you. But if you look at all the manuscript evidence, we have far more manuscripts of the Bible than any other ancient piece of literature, far closer to the original with far more consistency.
Is it the original though? Because I don't think they have the original transcript. They just have copies of copies, which I don't know. You can copy the original as many times as you want, but if you don't have the original, how do you know it's closely related or it's accurate? Anyways, side point, I guess.
That means the Bible is the most actually trustworthy ancient book in the history of the world. And when it
Is it? As soon as he said that, it just doesn't sound right. Is it really the most trusted? My goodness. He was talking about how we study ancient manuscript. I guess he missed some part. When you read texts about Alexander the Great and the things that he did, when the numbers seem so fake, when they put 1 million people versus Alexander 2,000 people, and Alexander won with only 9 people wounded in the 20,000 versus 1 million, you know something is up. You know this is propaganda. You know this is bullshit. You know this is not realistic. So you do some digging. You find out what the actual number is. You find out what actually happened. You try to piece it all together. Yeah, some aspect can be true. Alexander could have actually have less army than the enemy and still won. But it's not that big margin. You know when something doesn't sound okay, when it doesn't make any sense. So you do some digging. And if the digging comes back and say, oh, yes, you were right, this doesn't make any sense, then you will accept what actually makes sense with evidence backing it, not ignore it entirely. And that's exactly what Christians are doing. The Bible is unreliable, people. It has supernatural events in the text, which we are to investigate it. And when we do, we don't find any evidence backing any of them up. So in the text that describe Alexander the Great, some see him as a god. Well, he was like a descendant of Hercules or something. Was he actually a god? Would, because it's in a text, should we believe that Alexander the Great was actually a god? A man that most likely died from fever. It doesn't make sense. You look at the text, you look at the historical evidence, you look at the context, and then you come to a conclusion. And you don't even stop there. You keep investigating. But no, Christians want to just go on blind faith. The Bible said it happened, so it did happen. Because that makes any damn sense. So far, I'm still not sure what his problem is with translation issue. Even though, like, he's blaming other people, like Jehovah Witness for saying it's a translation issue. They also do this, by the way. Oh, you have the King James. You know what? The New King James says it different. Translation issues, I guess.
Comes to it, the way it would work, particularly in the Old Testament, let's say, for example, I was a scribe or a senior scribe, and then you were a scribe. I would get up with a copy of the Old Testament and I would read it, and then you would hear it, and then you would write it down. This is before the printing press. You were trained to be a scribe. This is like being a court stenographer. You went to school for this, and this is your career. Is it possible, if you were all writing down, that maybe someone could do misspelling of a word? Maybe some of us, we believe in Jesus, but not punctuation. We may get the punctuation wrong. That's me. How many of us, we heard the word, but we wrote it down because we misheard the word, right? There is a possibility that an error could be made, but then to correct it, there would be a series of editors that would go through all of our manuscripts, and if they found one error, what would they do to that scroll? Burn it. So you have amazing consistency, and occasionally you might have perchance a
I'm sorry, when and where did this happen? This strict constraint of the scripts? Um, what evidence do you have of this? That there were groups of people reading it out and you write it down, describing events that I don't think even happened. Closely guided, I guess.
human error. But 97 to 99% of the scriptures can be reconstructed from the ancient manuscripts. There is no debated section of belief or doctrine. The only debates are certain points of spelling or punctuation. But let's say,
Oh my goodness, I like that number, 97 to 99%. So we're throwing out numbers, we're throwing out things that they definitely don't have evidence to back. We're just throwing out a bunch of things that all the manuscripts actually align, 97 to 99%. The only thing that are different are punctuations. Wow.
there's 1,000 of us here, and you find two that spell a word one way and 998 that spell it the other way, you can come to the conclusion they probably got it wrong. And it's nothing of severity, seriousness, or note.
Thanks for joining me. My name is Pastor Mark. I've been teaching the Bible for more than 3 decades. And
Please stop teaching the Bible. Clearly, you have it all wrong and backward. Well, that's all I have for you today. It's quite interesting how these pastors just lie blatantly in front of their audience, but then they always get away with it. So, to make that money, you gotta do a little bit of lying, I guess, in this kind of industry that they're in. Thank you all for watching. If you liked the video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Have a good one, people.